Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles.
Chase Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got him at
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome into Operation Domination for a new episode as we get into the preview for week 5. We're already there. It just kicked off like a week ago. I'm totally thrown for a loop here. Make sure you download Operation Domination, your favorite podcast app, so you're not missing a thing and you're getting ready to win your weeks. You can also check us out on our YouTube channel when you go to the Fantasy Football Advice Network at FF Advice Net. Our video content, and along with everybody else's, on that great network of ours. Okay, so you should know the drill by now. We talk about popular start, sit, and trade questions. Now that we're into that part of the season, we're also going to talk about some of our biggest ranking differences. And while there is no Chase Thornton today, we will still talk about some DFS plays, that values that we really like. Make sure you check out his article. It comes out on Saturdays on the FSAN.com website. He'll talk about what his DFS cocktail of the week is going to be, in case you're looking forward to that. Who is in the building? Well, yours truly, Dan Mader, along with Adam LaRue off of his hiatus. Way to swap out just in the nick of time. How you doing, bud?
Doing good. Yeah, excited to be back. A little, sucked to miss last week. It was kind of a last minute thing where, I was traveling, phone broke, kind of burst into chaos a little bit. But yeah, glad to be back. Glad to have a little sense of normalcy back.
Who breaks their phone in the middle of traveling? That's the worst thing you could possibly do. Were all your tickets on that phone?
I had actually gotten a physical ticket, which is crazy because I never do that. I lucked out in that one regard where I had a physical ticket.
I didn't even know they still existed. Physical ticket. It's like somebody knew. They were like, he's going to smash his phone. Make sure he gets a physical copy.
Well, it was one of those where I had gotten my bag tag, my checked bag, like the tag for that, like at the physical kiosk. So they just gave me the ticket there. So it just happened that I had gotten it. I was like, I don't need this. I stuffed it in my bag, didn't think about it. And then I was like, well, I guess I need this now.
Well, I'm glad that wound up working out for you, at least from that standpoint. And at any rate, you're doing better than Joe Flacco. So I guess we should probably kick this off with a little breaking news. Dillon Gabriel, the new starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And what was going viral, though, wasn't about Dillon Gabriel. It wasn't even really about Joe Flacco. It was Shedeur Sanders mouthing words to the media when they were asking him questions about it. And if you didn't see the video, it looks like, I'm not a lip reader, but it looks like he mouths, this makes no sense. This makes no sense. That's what it looked like he was mouthing there. But yeah, so anyway, we knew they were going to go to Dillon Gabriel. He's been listed as the number 2 this entire time, so this doesn't come as a shock. Some people are maybe making the argument that it's surprising Joe Flacco would then be the number 2 instead of Shedeur just being the number 3 if Cleveland's willing to just go ahead and play the young quarterbacks. I didn't find that all that surprising, to be honest. They've made it pretty clear, at least the coaching staff anyway, that they're not big on Shedeur Sanders really making appearance if they can help it this season. Now, I don't know if they'll be able to help it, but what was your take on that?
Yeah, no, I think it makes perfect sense. They drafted Dillon higher. He's been higher in the depth chart all along. This makes sense. And I'm glad that they made the move early. Now, is this the week that I would have done it? Maybe not. I would have probably waited till after you have Brian Flores coming up for a rookie's first start. But nonetheless.
Not in London?
Yeah. I do think it's the earlier the better. Just given you want the opportunity to switch to Shedeur later in the season if it's not going well with Dillon. Because ultimately, you want to know your quarterback decision going into next season, because you're probably going to pick high enough where you can get a new quarterback if neither of these guys are your guys. You want to have looked thoroughly, because they're not getting a chance next year if not, I don't think.
It's just a little crazy to me because the Cleveland Browns, because of that defense, they are a competent offensive way from being an actual playoff team. That defense is so dominant, so good, that if you got any semblance of offensive play out of them, you have Quinton Judkins running well. If you just get something going in the passing attack, they could actually be a real pain in the butt for everybody down the stretch. That's what's crazy to me. I know there's been talk about could they find a way to get the Kirk Cousins deal done? Salary cap issues there, my friend, because Kirk Cousins is a guaranteed deal along with, Deshaun Watson, who they're still paying. Like maybe they could find a way to make that work, but there is some constraints that come with that. And how much do you really want to give up for a quarterback who's aging out, or are you just going to kick the can down the road? I don't know if Stefanski can afford to do that. So the Browns to me are just going to be a really interesting team all the way up to the trade deadline to decide what they want to do, because you can make the argument based on the defense. It's just a little bit strange to me, but neither here nor there. It doesn't change my fantasy football expectations for anybody on that team. We'll see how it shakes out, maybe with the tight ends, to see if the targets go a different way. But Quinton Judkins is the only person that you should really be honing in on when it comes to that offense anyway. So let's get into the star sick questions. And there's going to be a common theme this week, to no surprise. But Woody Marks popping up right away in our number one question. And somebody asking, and I thought this was really interesting, Woody Marks or Alvin Kamara PPR league as their RB2 heading into this week. Woody Marks, of course, playing the Baltimore Ravens, Alvin Kamara playing the New York Giants. So I'm curious to see, Adam, where do you fall in this issue? Because I think it's a lot closer than we would have expected.
I mean, it's way closer than I would have expected coming into the season. I was a harsh critic of Woody Marks, let's put it that way. But nonetheless, I'm still going Kamara, but like you said, it's a lot closer than I would prefer. I think the reality of the situation for me, at least, is this is New Orleans' probably closest matchup. I still think that, I'm betting wise, I know they are the underdog, but I still think they are the worse team than the Giants. But I think it's actually a pretty solid situation for Alvin Kamara specifically, in the sense that really the Giants are kind of propped up by a fantastic pass rush and not a whole lot else, which means the ball is going to have to come out quickly, and Kamara is kind of the recipient of that, Kamara and Olave. So I think that helps him quite a bit. And I mean, realistically, they've been outmatched in every game, and Kamara's had been at least solid. And on the Woody Marks side of it, if there's one team that is worse than the Saints, and is worse than pretty much everyone else, it's the Tennessee Titans. I think they're the worst team in the NFL by a lot. So Woody Marks is exciting. I'm not trying to be a hater. He had a great game. I'm trying to not overreact to what happens against the Titans, especially given this is not a game script that the Texans have had the rest of the season. Even against Baltimore, who has a equally bad defense or close to it. I'm not going to deny that. I'm just struggling to believe that it's fully replicable in the sense that a running back with half the snaps is going to put up that kind of damage.
No, I find that interesting, but you know what? I think we got something. I think we got a showdown here, because I'm on the Woody Marks side. Now, I thought you're now interesting from two fronts. One, your logic is correct when it comes to Alvin Kamara should be getting passes thrown to him against a trumped-up pass rush. But will it? See, the problem Kamara has really had so far, and what's driving people crazy, especially in PPR, which you thought you'd have a solid floor at the very least. Week 1, he had 2 targets. Then he had 5. Okay, I can live with the 5. Then he has 2 targets again. And then last week he has 6. Can Kellen Moore just consistently throw him the football? I mean, Chris Olave is getting 10 targets, 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. I don't know why that can't go to Kamara. Olave's supposed to be running down the field, not where Kamara territory is supposed to be. There's just a dysfunction with the offense and the usage of the little personnel they actually have right now with Kellen Moore in that Saints offense. It's driving me crazy. And then we've seen his playing time decrease. He had 82% of the snaps in week 1. He's down to 72% last week, as Kendre Miller has increased his snap count to 32%. So I think there's a little bit of an issue where Kendre Miller is starting to cut into Alvin Kamara a bit. Something I didn't think would ever happen. Right? Kendre Miller was in the dumpster somewhere, lost to everyone. And all of a sudden, he finally gets a new coaching regime, and he's getting an opportunity, and he's done well with the opportunity he's had. It's a great match against the Giants. No arguments there. They're giving up rushing yards left and right. And Kamara is a high-end RB3 for me this week. He's in my RB25. The reason being is that we can't trust the passing targets to actually go his way, the way that they should, the way they logically, as you laid out, should happen. I can't trust it. On the Woody Marks side, Chase said something, in his notes, even though he couldn't be here, similar to what you just said. Don't want to overreact. Can Woody Marks do it another week? Typically, I am on that side of the line, but I don't think we need another week to know that this is Woody Marks' job. Last week, they shut out the Tennessee Titans, right? They shut them out completely, 26-0. With a positive game script, something the Texans have not really been in too often so far this season. You would have thought that would have been more of a Nick Chubb line. Woody Marks took over the backfield. 58% of the snaps compared to Chubb's 40%. He had a 19% target share with a 36 target per route run. 60% of the short down and distance, the Chubb's 40%. And again, all in a shutout victory. The fact that this game script should have proven more Nick Chubb and Woody Marks was the lead back and performed the way that he did, I think his playing time only increases. I'm not making the argument Nick Chubb goes away, but what I am saying is Woody Marks has established himself as of last week as he is the lead guy, and Nick Chubb's going to be the guy who spells him, and not really even a two-way committee, just based off of that. I think that was a big key for them. Now, talk about their matchup. They get the Ravens, who running backs are going bananas on. They've given up the most fantasy points to running backs so far this season, the 5th most rushing yards and the 5th most receiving yards, and Cooper Rush is their quarterback, which means we could see another positive game script for the Houston Texans heading into this one. Woody Marks is my RB21. I have him top 24, meaning you're locking him in as an RB2 this week. I don't know if you want to rebuttal to any of that.
I mean, there's two things. I think the first is the Ravens defense is bad, and I'm not going to defend them from being bad. They are. But do we not think that those numbers are pumped up a little bit on that being the Bills, the Lions, and the Chiefs? That's got to confound the stats a little bit.
The Chiefs can't run. They got Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. They can't run.
They can throw the ball to running backs. They
Sure.
didn't run that great. They scored touchdown. Pacheco got a receiving touchdown.
It's fair to say it could be a little bit trumped up, but because of how banged up they are, both their defensive tackles are now on IR. Roquan Smith, we don't know if he's going to play because he got banged up this past Sunday. This is legit. I think they're just a legit bad run defense. I don't think it necessarily takes a juggernaut rushing offense to get whatever they want to get against them, even with a porous offensive line of the Houston Texans, just given their injury state at the moment. That would be my rebuttal to that. So we'll show this down. Woody Marks versus Alvin Kamara, PPR, and we're gonna see what happens. So already kicking off the show, I should give a shout out to Chase because he did make me not be undefeated anymore. Because we had a showdown between the Packers defense and the Chargers defense. Who would have thunk going into the week the number one defense in the league versus a CeeDee Lamb-less Dallas Cowboys team would drop a 40 burger. It just wasn't part of my process. My bad. And the Chargers, who lost to the freaking Giants, put up more fantasy points than Green Bay Packers.
Have a particularly great week.
It's what? This is insane. Anyway, let's move on to the next question, which does involve Woody Marks as you would have it. So this person wants to know, who should they trade Woody Marks for? Specifically a wide receiver. They lost Malik Neighbors, right? You picked up Woody Marks off the waiver wire. They want to trade him for a wide receiver. Probably has enough depth. The running back doesn't get into detail here, but a lot of people I think are finding themselves in a situation where hey, I got some value. And if you're already sitting pretty at running back, you might need a second or third receiver for a couple of reasons. One, receivers just dropped like flies as of recently. And two, even the guys that you did draft in the first round, for the most part, are underperforming. So you have a couple of issues kind of going on here. So I understand this question completely, and I think it's one a lot of people have. Adam, what was your take on this? Who would you target if you had Woody Marks and were able to trade him away?
Yeah, I threw out a few names that I would look at. Rasheed was number one on my list, Rasheed Rice. The Chiefs, for all their flaws and kind of all the things we've been annoyed about them lately in recent years, they're, if I'm not mistaken, 12th in pass attempts and 8th in passing touchdowns. They are throwing the ball. They want to be a passing team again. It hasn't worked out so far, at least until this last week against the Ravens. But that's what they want to be. And I think that you saw that open up quite a bit when Xavier Worthy came back last week. And I think it opened up even more when they get Rasheed Rice here in 2 more weeks. So it's not far away. That person who has Rashee Rice, I know I drafted Rashee a couple leagues, and I'm like, I only have to hold out, like a month and a half. It's not that bad. And I'm holding strong personally, but man, there's a couple leagues where it's tempting to sell out because it's getting tough. As you've mentioned, like injuries are mounting at the wide receiver position. So that was the first name on my list. The other guys, and I'll go through them quicker, are Chris Godwin, explanatory. McLaurin, I still believe in him season long. I think that he's going to move in the right direction. And Zay Flowers, I think some people could be a little afraid of him with Lamar potentially missing 2-3 weeks here.
Yeah, I think all those names are fair because especially here's the caveat, kind of like you said, if you have Rashee Rice, your plan the whole time, hopefully, was that, look, I just need to hold on, and then hopefully I'm gifted a wide receiver 1 that I drafted in the 6th, 7th round come week 7, right? That was always the plan. But if you're sitting 0-4, to your point, and you're staring at Rashee Rice, it's hard to keep holding on when you haven't gotten a win yet, or even if you're 1-3. It's hard to do that. So those are the situations, and that goes for all the players that you listed. See if you could take advantage of it. It's why I bring this up. So if you go off the calculators, and I don't make trades based off the calculators, but I do like to look at them for context of the show. Like, all right, what's the calculated value at? So make sure we're giving you, accurate information here. Straight up, his value on the calculators is not that impressive to me. Right now, it would be straight up for Wan'Dale Robinson or straight up for Matthew Golden. Wide receivers in that range. I think Woody Marks is worth more than that, especially as I laid out. I think he just took over this job. And I don't think Joe Mixon is playing this year. We've been talking about that since the summer with August and with Dr. Brian Scott that we didn't think Joe Mixon was going to play this year. So you look at a guy who could be potentially the starting running back for the rest of the season. I think he's worth more than that. But if you could package him with something, again, if you have Woody Marks, you have depth because you already have the running backs in place. If you can package him with another wide receiver or with maybe you have an extra quarterback, whatever the case may be, I think you could look at names legitimately like A.J. Brown, like Brian Thomas, like Ladd McConkey, all players that are performing well under their expected fantasy points. So there's reason to think that they could boost their ceiling a little bit than what we have seen to this point. And all players are probably directly responsible for teams not having winning records at the moment as well. So I think you got a two-way street there. Maybe you package something together. But those are all names to look out for. Let's talk about the next one. Should I start Justin Fields versus Dallas or sit Bo Nix versus Philadelphia? I always think it's funny when you get these questions like this after Monday night games and everybody's watching. Bo Nix had a great game in Cincinnati, even though he's completely stunk up until this point. To me, this is a no-brainer. How do you see it?
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Even when it's one of those things where as a football watcher, you have to disconnect fantasy to a degree because you watched the game and Justin Fields did not look good. But the reality of the situation is even in fantasy, he still had a decent day.
Finished top 10 quarterback.
Yeah. So it's okay, Bo Nix played lights out against a great matchup, and we're still they're comparable. The matchup is not the same for Bo Nix this week, and the matchup is surely not the same for Justin Fields. They have gone in the opposite direction. So yeah, I think it's a slam dunk with Justin Fields.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. Look, Dallas is not just a defense that you can pick on no matter what position you have. Pretty much if you got them, you start them. But they're also a defense that right now is allowing the 6th most rushing yards to the quarterback position, meaning this is ripe for the taking for Justin Fields to do whatever it is that he wants to do. And when you mix in the fact that this Jets defense is not good under Aaron Glenn right now, it gives you reason why Justin Fields is going to have to make plays and keep up pace. So Justin Fields actually in my top 5 this week. That's how surefire thing he is for me. All right, so let's talk about our next question. And another Brian Thomas mentioned here. So lineup for week 5, trying to ask, should I start Brian Thomas or DeVonta Smith? And the fact that you have to bench one of these guys and ask this question is just shows you how week 5 is insane in the NFL season any other time. Where do you fall on this, Adam? Because this is one of 2 disappointing wide receivers that no one can quite seem to get a handle on.
Yeah, and this is one where I agree wholeheartedly with what Chase has in his notes. Or I have Thomas, he has Thomas. But the reasoning is exactly what he had to say, which is that the targets are there for Brian Thomas. They're utilizing him. They are running the routes for him to be involved. He is an involved player in this offense. and it's an offense that has been largely as efficient. Like everyone's in shambles in the fantasy world because, the passing options, Brian Thomas in particular, but, also other guys like haven't been as involved as we'd like, but it's been a solid offense. The rushing offense is like number 3 or something like that in the NFL. Like they've been good and they are throwing the ball. He has the targets. This is just something for Brian Thomas that I have a really hard time believing continues. I know everyone's frustrated. I know it sucks, but I have a hard, like, the things with DeVonta will not change. The things with Brian Thomas might.
Agree with that wholeheartedly. Now, first of all, for this week, Brian Thomas is coming to my wide receiver 22. DeVonta Smith's my wide receiver 29. And honestly, they would both be wide receiver 3s if it wasn't for 4 teams on bye this week. So that does say something to the Brian Thomas point of it all. But kind of to your point, right now, his expected fantasy points in half-point PPR leagues would be 13.4. And while that's still not quite what you're looking for out of what some people drafted as a first-round draft pick, he's only performing at 7.5 points per game at the moment. So that kind of encompasses what you said as far as the usage is there where this could get corrected still, 100%. For DeVonta, on the other hand, he's performing his 7.4 average points per game is at his expected level. That's what's the problem. Like the Eagles offense right now, passing wise, is broken 100%. And maybe we'll talk about more about that later, but I want to finish up on Brian Thomas real quick. The problem for Brian Thomas is not Brian Thomas. It's not Liam Cohen. The problem is Trevor Lawrence. I think we've gone past the point of, is Trevor Lawrence a bust or not? I think we're entering the conversation, is Trevor Lawrence a bum or not? Second worst in completion over expected, 10th worst in EPA per dropback, 4th worst quarterback rating. Only Jake Browning, Cam Ward, and Joe Flacco have a worse rating than Trevor Lawrence right now. That's how bad he is. So if you look at me like, oh, we can't have a conversation about, is he a bum? We're having a conversation about, is he a bum? The bus conversation went out the window a long time for me. And I know he's been through coaching changes and everything else, but what sticks out to me the most is not once have I seen Trevor Lawrence improve his fundamentals in any capacity, and it shows on the field. Not one time. But yeah, so I don't know if you had anything to add to that. We can go on to the next question, and I'll leave it there for everybody who wants to tweet me at DanMaterFF if they want to go crazy over Trevor Lawrence there. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. This person, and look, I have a number of leagues where I have both of them. You're constantly finding yourself in this dilemma now when they're both healthy. Which one do you start? So I want you to go first.
I know. I'm going Kenneth Walker. Look, I think that this has become very interesting where Kenneth Walker is the one that has the receiving workload. Not that there's much for the pass game for the running backs here. To be fair, they're not throwing to the running backs much at all. But when they do, it is Kenneth Walker. We have 1 reception for 5 yards, if I'm not mistaken, for Zach Charbonnet. It's not much. So I think there's that. Like when we're looking at bad running back matchups or ones that get a little bit wonky, like having that helps. I think the other part of it for me is Kenneth Walker is the one that they're making an honest effort to utilize him in his strengths. He's the only person on this team that they let do gap runs. I think Charbonnet has like 2. I think Kalani has like 1 or 2. And then you have Kenneth Walker over here who has as many zone runs as anyone else, but is also like half and half between zone and gap. Like they're making him do the things that he's comfortable doing. They're conforming to him. They're not just like throwing him out there for like, whatever. Whereas what I'm seeing from Charbonnet is that he's the one that they trust pass blocking. And by virtue of that, they have to put him in the game. So they will run to keep defenses honest with him. They will throw with defenses on, because he's a good pass blocker, but they're not throwing to him. They're just, he's not even necessarily running a ton of routes. He's just a really good pass blocker, and they're using him that way. So he's someone who is going to continue to be on the field. He's going to continue to have some good games. He might even have a better floor because he's going to, just keep doing a lot of the same things. But Kenneth Walker, I think, is the one that they want to make this offense run through, that they're really trying to make work. They're putting a lot more resources into using. So he's the one that I'm going to go with more often than not.
And I think most people would agree with you. Now, let me be clear. Actually, I should probably hit this first. Yes, that's right. We got 2 showdowns in one show. How about them apples? So first, I want to clarify with this. I have them 2 spots apart. And the kicker is I have Zach Charbonnet at RB22 and Kenneth Walker at RB24. Meaning I'm trying to play both of them if you got them this week, essentially, especially on a heavy bye week anyway. But the reason why I have Charbonnet 2 spots ahead, partly due to what you said. He is the passing down roll back. Now, the targets haven't necessarily reflected that. They're not really throwing the ball to the running backs, period, whether it's Kenneth Walker on the field or Zach Charbonnet. But he is getting the usage there. At some point, I got to think Sam Darnold's checking the ball down a little bit more. Tampa Bay, who likes to blitz, and I know I'm using your logic from the Saints and Giants game, but Tampa Bay, who likes to blitz, you think maybe he would dump it off, or maybe they run a few more screens with Charbonnet out there, being that he is playing majority of the 2-minute drill, all the long down and distances, or majority of the long down and distances, and has the more routes run and all of that good nature. So he's playing in that role. The other role that's very clear to me is that once they get inside the 10-yard line, Kenneth Walker is not allowed to touch the football, apparently. We saw the 1 week with Charbonnet out, and Walker had 2 touchdowns. We know from years past he can convert. I don't know why all of a sudden Seattle sees him as just this liability. I get that he bounces backwards sometimes when he's supposed to run forward. I get it. That's what comes with the territory of Kenneth Walker. Okay, you knew what you're getting into before that. Most of the time, though, he finds a way to finish or make a big play. Whatever. It's not how I would run it. But what's happening right now is Charbonnet has 100 when both are on the field. He has 100% of inside the 5 carries. And I think if you look at the 10-yard line, he has 90% of inside the 10-yard line snaps. So he's getting the opportunities to score, and he's in the passing situations. So now that melds down to Kenneth Walker is a between the 20s rusher when both of these guys are active. That could be fine, but that's capped unless he breaks a big touchdown run, typically in fantasy football. Then I move to the matchup. Tampa Bay has allowed the least amount of rushing yards to the running back position, but they have allowed the most receiving yards to the running back position. So using that logic, thinking Charbonnet plays in that role and he has the red zone role, I think he nudges out Kenneth Walker by just enough because of touchdowns and possible catches. So I don't even want to rebuttal to that at all.
Yeah, I would not be completely shocked if it, goes out that way. I guess my concern is that where you see them potentially, unleashing him as a receiving weapon when, facing blitz, I wonder if they don't keep a tight end home and keep him home and just have more blockers. That has been what they've done so far. Tampa Bay is an extreme that we haven't seen them play against yet. So maybe they change it up going against an extreme opponent, but that's what I've seen. And that's kind of my inclination, is that they just keep more people home to block. And he is one of them.
No, sure. That's completely fair. And one other thing I want to point out, though, Charbonnet, his first game back off the foot issue, only had 2 less snaps than Kenneth Walker. People felt like Kenneth Walker was playing so much more. He really didn't in that game. So this is still a 2-way committee at that.
Just to be clear, what you were saying, snap-wise, they are even. It's just what they're doing with those snaps. It may sometimes feel like Kenneth Walker has more, but snaps, they're going to be split.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll see how that one goes. We got Charbonnet versus Walker. We got Woody Marks versus Alvin Kamara. May the best man win. Okay, so let's move into the part of the segment where we talk about some of our big discrepancies, or bigger discrepancies, I should say, between our rankings and what consensus out there is telling you. So Adam, give me your top guy first.
Let me give the one that it's not necessarily the biggest discrepancy, but it's the one that surprised me the most. And that's Xavier Worthy. Who ECR has at, I believe, 17. I have him at 13. I mean, he stepped right back in and it was pretty involved in a game that they won pretty handedly. And they didn't need to, if you were ever going to, let off the gas with a guy coming off an injury, they could have in the second half. He still played, I think, something like 60% of the snaps. He had rush attempts. He had 8 targets. Like, that's exactly what you want to see, because I think that only goes up. So for me, he's someone that I think is a fringe wide receiver 1, especially as I know you're about to mention a guy that a lot of people have as a wide receiver 1. My next guy is a guy that a lot of people have as a wide receiver 1. Like, there's some names that we historically lock into the wide receiver 1 category that aren't performing. So I think this is a guy who, if you consider, like, we should be having the conversation, like, when healthy, is he in that like tier of guys? So
at least until Rashee Rice comes back, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but I'm with you. Like, it wasn't as extreme as the Chris Godwin thing, who comes off of his year-long injury and plays 80 snaps and gets 10 targets. But it was similar in the sense of, like, this guy's been banged up with a shoulder. He's skinny as a stick to begin with. And it was as if he hasn't missed any time at all, frankly, this season, with the way that they utilize them. So to your point, yeah, they got him in the run game. They got him in the passing game. And the Chiefs offense as a whole, as a result, looked like it had new life. I think that's the biggest point of it all with Xavier Worthy. So I like it. I'm with you. I have him at 16. So I'm only one spot ahead of ECR. I'm not quite as high as you, but I definitely understand the sentiment there of being excited about Xavier Worthy this particular week. All right, I'm going to talk about my guy real quick. And I'm not going to knock ECR for this because I think it hadn't caught up to the news that dropped today. So Bucky Irving was seen at practice in crutches and in a cast. Pretty good sign. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Make sure you tune in for injury inquiries with Dr. Brian Scott. But that's a pretty good sign that you're not going to play. I don't think I need a medical professional to be able to pull that one out of my hats. But I already had Rachaad White inside my top 20. I think that's still going to be higher than what most people have him at. So Seattle is kind of similar to Tampa Bay, where they've allowed the 7th fewest rushing yards to a running back, but have allowed the 2nd most receiving yards to the running backs. And that's up Rachaad White's bread and butter. I mean, we know all of his inefficiencies as a runner. He just gets volume there. But if he can do damage as a pass catcher, then that's all she wrote. Who cares? So I have him as a top 20 running back heading into this. I really don't expect a huge role out of Sean Tucker. Like, I moved Sean Tucker up into that, like, handcuff tier of guys who are like, okay, these are the guys who spell these running backs to a certain level. That's so, like, my RB4, like, that's where I kind of moved him to. I know it's a small sample size, but the one example we do have of this was back week 14 last season, where Bucky Irving got hurt very, very early in the game. Rachaad White came in. He had 20 plus opportunities. Sean Tucker only had 5. So like, people still remember the Sean Tucker name because at one point people thought this was going to be a 3-way committee last year. Turns out that was just for one game when we never saw Sean Tucker again. I think that remains true, where White is clearly ahead of Tucker in this scenario. I don't think this is a committee. So Rachaad White, if you got him, I think he's a must RB2 play for me. Let's get back to you and go. Who's your next guy that you were mentioning there?
First of all, I'm just going to throw this out there because it's moving and because it's recent. ECR has gone up to 28 on him. So you're still well ahead, but it has started moving in that direction. But I'm with you. I have him at like 23 or something. So my next guy is one that we need to have a conversation. I wanted to talk about the receiver position. Guys, like, we're putting Justin Jefferson at number 4 on name value and name value alone. I know he had a great last week, but like every other week this year, he's been a wide receiver 30. And look, last week was a pretty awesome matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. Now we're working with like the lowest over under of the week, I believe. I think they're at 36.5. Like, yeah. It's
I'm still betting under that, by the way. But yeah, go ahead.
Agree. It's a rookie quarterback versus Brian Flores on one side, and then a backup quarterback versus the best defense in the NFL on the other. So that's kind of my point, is like, guys, I know Justin Jefferson's the best wide receiver in the NFL. This isn't a knock on Justin Jefferson. It's like, if this offense goes and scores 14 points, like, the only way he gets to 10 is if he scores one of them, because I just don't think there's going to be much of moving the ball in this game. And we've already seen that more often than not, he's been a wide receiver 3 this year. Just, again, not his fault. He's looked fine. He's getting open. When he gets opportunities, he catches the ball. But we don't have good quarterbacks throwing him the ball. That offensive line has not been that great. And it's a horrific matchup otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in line with you. I have Jefferson at 11. So we're seeing that roll similarly. The Vikings offensive line is banged up going up against Cleveland. On top of it, Carson Wentz, we know what he does under pressure. I mean, the only prayer that Justin Jefferson has is that Wentz does still seem to have his deep ball. So maybe he gets one big one. But I think that's kind of what you're hoping for. That's typically what you hope for out of wide receiver threes, not guys in as top 5 wide receivers.
I can't stomach putting him lower than 12. I'm not taking him out of my wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
But, like, we really need to have the conversation that, like, we could be getting there at least until they figure out a passing game. It's not his fault. It's not a Jefferson problem. It's an offense problem, and this matchup is horrible. Like, they're going to bring pressure, like interior pressure, exterior pressure. And like you said, Carson Wentz under pressure is not a good thing.
Well, I'll piggyback off of that because I'm with you. I'm not ready to put Jefferson outside my top 12 because Carson Wentz, even though he's a backup quarterback, is better than some of the backup quarterback we're seeing elsewhere.
Cough.
Yeah, and that's what happens here now with Ja'Marr Chase, who I'm about to talk about, who I do not only have outside my top 12, he's outside my top 20. And frankly, if it wasn't a bye week, he'd be in my wide receiver 3 tier. Like, that's how ugly this thing has gotten in Cincinnati. That's how inept Jake Browning was. Remember when we thought Jake Browning's a backup quarter, like, oh, he can still get the ball to the top. He can't do that. And it wasn't just because they played Denver. He hasn't been able to do that at all. So Ja'Marr Chase, here's what's funny. On his points per average, right, he's wide receiver 22. Completely trumped up by the week 2 game. Because he hasn't finished better than a wide receiver 40 in any of the other weeks. He hasn't scored double-digit points in half-point PPR leagues outside of week 2 when he had the 3 touchdown performance. That's how bad it has been. So you're going against Detroit now, who 13th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, more towards the middle of the pack. But here's the problem. They're second in the league in sacks, and they're in the top 10 in quarterback pressures. And Jake Browning behind that offensive line, that's the main issue. Like, I don't have no doubt that if Browning actually had time to throw the ball, he could get the ball to Ja'Marr Chase. He doesn't have time. You're not going to have time this week against this Detroit defense on top of it. So this whole thing could get real ugly, almost just as what we saw in Denver. Zach Taylor, go bye-bye. I don't want to hear the Joe Burrow excuse. Please get rid of this man. There's plenty of teams out there, plenty of coaches out there. We've already seen it this year who have had to do something with backup quarterbacks. They look like the Tennessee Titans out there, and they're far more talented. That's the problem. Another coach needs to go from that tree. Anyway, just to keep back on track here. One other thing I just wanted to mention, since we're talking about Ja'Marr Chase, I have bet the under on T. Higgins every single week this year, and I have hit every single week this year with he's been playing with Jake Browning. So T. Higgins is somebody who's not even in my top 36. I'm benching T. Higgins all the way. Yeah. That's what we're looking at right now with this offense. That's
well, one other thing to throw out there, just if you're hoping the volume and game script saves your day, as they've been getting beat up badly, Jake Browning has gone less and less pass attempts every week.
Yeah.
Despite them losing by like 40 plus, he had like 25 last week. He's had the most passing attempts he has this season is when he came in for Joe Burrow against Jacksonville. He's been in the 20s both times when they were losing 30 plus because they know that giving him the ball more just makes it worse for them.
Well, it's twofold. Part of it's that. The other part of it is they can't sustain drives because he just can't. And the other part I'm piggybacking off of is that their defense is so bad, their defense can't get off the field either. So they're getting demolished in time of possession on top of all this. They're not even getting the opportunities to potentially throw the football more. Not that you would want to because of Jake Browning right now. Anyway, all right, your last guy was Rachaad White. So we already talked about Rachaad White. Never mind. I'll give you my last guy and see what you have to say. Dalton Kincaid. I know it's a heavy bye week. ECR has him ranked at tight end 7. Are you kidding me? Now, here's what's crazy about I have him at tight end 14, by the way. Like, I don't even like streamer territory only. I'm not trying to put him in my lineup. I get that he's had touchdowns in 3 of the 4 weeks. And typically speaking, when you have a tight end, we're like, well, that's if I'm looking for a low end tight end one, that's good enough. I get it. It's so unsustainable. He had 2 targets last week, 1 catch. That 1 catch happened to go for a touchdown. He's on a 60% snap count with a 16% target share. These touchdowns are not going to continue. And if it wasn't bad enough that we already knew that a lot of his playing time gets siphoned off by Dawson Knox. Now they're getting Jackson Hawes in the mix. Like, I'm staying away from Kincaid, even in a week like this. I don't know. Your thoughts?
I still have him in my top 12, but I'm at 11. So I am lower than ECR. It is literally, so I just behind the curtains, I take into the over-unders into account for my, setting my rankings a decent amount. So he gets propped up quite a bit by being at a 49.5 over-under. Like, that is what keeps him in my top 12. To be clear, it is not his role. It is not the volume. It is, he does get targets in the end zone enough in a game that expects to score 50. And I'm going to be honest, I think a lot of those points are on the Buffalo side, that he gets one and it's fine.
That is what you're hoping for, but it's you're playing with fire. That's all I can say to that. All right, so I'm going to do this just for Chase, even though he's not here. Let's get into the DFS cocktail hour. All right. We don't have a cocktail recipe for you on this show. Again, make sure you go to fsan.com. That article, the DFS cocktail, will come out on Saturday. You can check it out along with whatever recipe he's concocted. And he's been on fire. They've been pretty good. Here, I'll go through some of the players that Chase has values that he wants you to look at right now. So Justin Fields, big one, $5,600. I think that's going to be a very, very common play for obvious reasons. And then combining him up with Garrett Wilson does make a lot of sense. He's at 6,100. He's got one of the biggest target shares you could possibly have as a wide receiver because he's the only wide receiver who can catch the ball in the New York Jets right now. So, and playing against Dallas makes sense there too. And then coming back, he's got George Pickens. I don't mind it there. I just talked about it. The Jets defense is not good. It's not good at all. You just saw Miami, who couldn't move the ball against anybody, did pretty much whatever they wanted to do, even after Tyreek Hill got hurt. Like, this is just not the Jets defense of old. And Adam, I just want to throw this out there because I know I would get a chance to talk about it now. Aaron Glenn sucks. All right. That Jets defense has talent. When was the Detroit's defense ever good on Aaron Glenn? What is he doing to the Jets defense now? It blows my mind that Aaron Glenn gets made out to be this good coordinator, this good coach. He can't coach defense. He has guys playing nonstop man-to-man and is taking away anything that defense could actually have been good at. Doesn't mix it up. They're easy to adjust to. And as a result, you're seeing a dividend. Like, Sauce Gardner is not even a corner I fear in this scheme right now. Like, that's how bad it is. I don't know. I had to throw that out there. And then the last one is Jahmyr Gibbs against Cincinnati, paying up for $7,700. That kind of speaks for itself. What are some values you're looking at?
Looking at the tight end position, I think Jake Ferguson, especially for getting Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson or other players from that game, I think Jake Ferguson makes total sense. Like, he's someone who I have him, just for clarity, he's my tight end 3 in the week, and he's at $4,800, which I think is also the third most valuable tight end. But I think he's worth it. I mean, candidly, I actually have him above McBride, who I think is a little bit down for me this week. I think he's another name that is getting a little pumped. But nonetheless, yeah, I think Jake Ferguson makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, no, he's actually one of my lineups as well. Like you said, $4,800, third tight end on the week, tons of targets, especially DraftKings, PPR counts. That's where you want him at. Hopeful for a few more touchdowns. But we just watched Darren Waller score 2. So that's definitely on the shelf there. Here's a value for you. Justin Herbert. $6,100 against the Commanders. I've been telling everybody all year, the Commanders defense is a farce. It's not good. And we saw them get lit up by the Atlanta Falcons, who had literally been shut out the week before by the Carolina Panthers. Justin Herbert in a revenge game back in LA after having a bad week against the Giants on the East Coast. Yeah, $6,100 for a guy who's performing like a top 5 quarterback most weeks than not. That's something I'm looking out for too. And then just pair him up with Quentin Johnson. Adam, I have to confess, I've had to cave on Quentin Johnson.
Me too.
It doesn't make sense to me how he went from like, this dude can't catch the ball and is barely even playing. He's just out there running the treadmill to like the guy's a wide receiver 1. I have him ranked inside my top 10 this week. He's $5,700 against Commanders.
I agree completely. I have him as my wide receiver 8 this week.
Can this continue? Do you think this continues?
I mean, I think so. Like it obviously, right? Because of how bad it started, but it's been an upward trajectory the whole time. It just really accelerated this year. And he's someone that I liked coming out. Like, to be honest with you, I thought he was going to be really good coming out. His rookie year was the surprise to me. So, I mean, maybe Harbaugh's just good at his job.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, give him credit. Like, talk about all the time how coaches need to find ways to better develop in the NFL. They don't, and Harbaugh has. Like, I give him all the credit. It's just the turnaround is insane.
There's no example I can. Maybe like DeVonta Adams, but even then, I don't think that was that bad.
No, I agree. It wasn't on Quentin Johnson. Like, we knew DeVonta Adams was going to keep getting his playing time and keep getting his opportunities. We thought Quentin Johnson might be out of a job after they drafted Trey Harris in the second round.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts. But yeah, right now you got a wide receiver 1 sitting there at $5,700. You have any other values on your lineup?
First of all, I got to say, we talked about Justin Fields being in our top 5 and whatnot. I also have Justin Herbert in my top 5. So especially in like tournament play, like that makes a ton of sense because, like you said, Justin Fields is going to be a popular name.
Sure.
Yeah. So other names, I mean. Yeah, Quentin Johnson was an awesome one. I think Jaylen Waddle makes a ton of sense down there at $5,400. I mean, who else? And this is one of the games where I think Miami's not completely outmatched. You're going to, struggle to find those throughout the season. So this is one where I actually think, you're not going to benefit from a game script where they're losing, but also I think they can have a little bit of back and forth, a little bit of control. Should be a close game. So I think it's one where, he should be featured pretty heavily.
We've been asking.
Should be.
Right. Should
be.
No, I understand what you're prefacing right there because I was just about to jump into it. Like, we have been asking for Jaylen Waddle to be more involved in the offense in the Mike McDaniel system because of what we know he could do with his ability if he just had a few more opportunities. Tyreek Hill's not there. Your second target now is Darren Waller, who, although had a nice debut, he's still Darren Waller, still multiple years removed from the NFL here. So if it doesn't happen now, it might never happen, I guess, to kind of put it to that point. I think there is something that needs to be said, though, that he will likely be drawing the J.C. Horn shadow, which has been a real thing this year. Like, he has done an excellent job. He has shut down wide receiver 1s throughout the season so far. So if Waddle doesn't have a great production line, it wouldn't totally surprise me for that reason. But I'm with you here. $5,400 with an opportunity now to get a significant target share and hopefully more areas of the field than just 20 yards down the field, that being the big key in this offense, then this is something we should be able to see. We know what he can do with the ball in his hands after the catch. Here's one for you. Jakobi Meyers. So I know he's been having a little bit of a down weeks last couple of weeks, going up against the Colts, a little bit banged up in the cornerback, been able to take advantage of them in the secondary to some degree. We watched, and Jakobi Meyers is not Puka Nacua, but we watched Puka Nacua have 15 catches like he was a running back, essentially, with the opportunities he was getting this past week.
Yeah, he retired Xavier Howard.
Yeah.
He put his NFL career to rest.
Well, I think, wasn't your coach trying to say he's not done? He's not toast? We were trying to make that argument.
I don't know, but he retired today. It's over. It's literally over.
Oh man, yeah. So that was brutal. So here's the deal. Brock Bowers, even with no Michael Mayer, and I had propped up Brock Bowers to be a top 3 tight end. I was like, he's gonna get back to it. There was no Michael Mayer this past week. The snap share has to go his way. It's what happened when Mayer went down, and Chip Kelly found a way to play the third string tight end enough to just limit Brock Bowers enough to limit that fantasy upside. The only guy I trust to run the routes, have the playing time, and the target share that he consistently needs to get right now in that offense is Jakobi Meyers. Geno Smith has not been playing well the last couple of weeks. That's been a big key to this whole thing. But this is a matchup, especially at a $5,600 mark, where I think Jakobi is in a position to get double-digit targets in a game that I think could be higher scoring than people are going to realize. I actually have the over in that game to begin with.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually have Geno Smith flirting with my top 12 quarterbacks this week, which I know is crazy given he has more interceptions than touchdowns right now. But his good weeks have been good. His bad weeks have just been really bad. I'm thinking a good week's coming.
Oh, woof. I do have JSN, $7,100 wide receiver 1 in my flex position. I think that's a good value for a guy who's been targeted as a wide receiver 1. Adam, I want you to give me one more of your guys.
Yeah. If you give me just a second, I had someone up here. Gosh, who was it?
By the way, Woody Marks, 5,400. I feel like we should mention that.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. And to your point from earlier, Rachaad White's another mention. But what I was going to throw out here actually is Cam Scatterbo up against New Orleans. That feels like a pretty good situation. Like I said, I think New Orleans makes this spicier than people are probably going to give him credit. But ultimately, I do think this is one where the Giants are going to have the best opportunity this season to actually just run the ball down a team's throats and have play with the lead. So I think this is the perfect situation for Scatterbo. And against a run defense that's been putrid this season everything about New Orleans has been putrid, but the run defense is one of them.
No, 100%. 25 carries last week. And he's going to need to carry the rock. So there's people out there who want to stream Jackson Dart. He has a hamstring issue, guys. If Jackson Dart's not mobile, he can't do the things that you would want him to do in the first place. They're going to have to lean on Cam Scatterbo even more so. And I do think he'll be more involved in the passing game than he was last week with just 2 targets too. So yeah, I like the volume for Cam Scatterbo quite a bit myself as well. I just thought it was funny watching him play. Like, you are so slow, like so quick yet so slow at the same time. Like, did the things he did in college, right? You can't bring him down first tackle. You have to gang tackle him. He can make guys miss all day long, but once he gets past the guy, he only gets like 3 yards down, the field, and then someone's already on top of him. I just thought that was kind of funny to watch there. But that's going to wrap up the show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow with the Injury Inquiries episode with Dr. Brian Scott. Make sure you download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app and check out our video content when you go to Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. I'm Dan Mater. He's Adam LaRue. We'll see you guys later.